The night was quiet. Too quiet. Officer James Hartley had been standing guard outside the private medical wing for 3 hours. Something felt wrong. The usual sounds of the building had faded. No footsteps from the nursing staff. No distant hum of equipment. Just silence. He checked his watch. 2:47 a.m. Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, was recovering inside from abdominal surgery. The public knew she was in hospital. What they didn't know was which one, which floor, which route the security team would use when it was time to move her. That information was classified, locked down, protected. So why did James just see a flash of light from the building across the street? He stepped closer to the window, his hand moving instinctively to his radio. The building opposite was supposed to be empty. Renovations had been paused for weeks. No workers, no lights, no access. But there it was again. A brief glint, like a lens catching the moonlight. James's pulse quickened. He pressed the radio button. Control, this is Hartley. Possible visual contact, north building, 4th floor. Requesting immediate sweep. Static crackled. Then a voice. Copy that. Stand by. He didn't stand by. Years of training told him that waiting could be the difference between safety and disaster. He moved toward the stairwell, eyes locked on the window across the street. Whoever was over there had a clear view of the medical wing, a clear view of the private exit route. They'd planned for Kate's discharge, the route only 6 people knew about. His radio buzzed again. Hartley, we're showing no alarms, no breach. Building is secure. I saw something, James insisted, his voice low but firm. A reflection. Someone's watching. Psst. There was a pause. Then another voice came through, older, commanding. This is Commander Ashford. Hartley, describe exactly what you saw. James took a breath. A lens reflection, sir. 4th floor, northwest corner. Twice in the last 90 seconds. Another pause. Longer this time? Do not engage. Do not leave your post. We're sending a team. But James was already moving. He slipped through the side door into the cold January air. The street was empty. No cars, no movement. Just the glow of streetlights cutting through the fog. He crossed quickly, keeping low, his eyes scanning every shadow. The north building loomed ahead, dark and silent. The main entrance was chained shut, a faded sign warning of construction hazards, but the side door was cracked open. James felt his stomach tighten. He pulled his flashlight, clicked it on, stepped inside. The smell hit him first. Dust, old paint, dampness. The beam of his flashlight swept across an empty lobby. Broken tiles scattered across the floor. Everything looked abandoned, except for the footprints in the dust. Fresh ones, leading toward the stairs. If you're hooked already, hit that subscribe button because this story is just getting started. You won't believe what happens next. James followed the prints, his breathing steady, despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Each step echoed in the hollow space. He reached the stairwell and paused, listening. Nothing. He began to climb. 1 floor. 2 floors. 3 at the 4th floor landing. He stopped. The door was open. Just a crack, and through it he could see a faint blue glow. James pushed the door slowly. It creaked. The glow came from the far corner of the room, behind a stack of old construction equipment. He moved closer, flashlight raised, and then he saw it. A laptop, a tripod, a high-powered camera with a telephoto lens aimed directly at the hospital across the street. And on the laptop screen, a detailed map, not just any map, Kate's evacuation route. Every turn, every exit, every security checkpoint, time-stamped for tomorrow morning. James's blood ran cold. He reached for his radio, but before he could speak, he heard the sound behind him, a footstep. He spun around, flashlight cutting through the darkness. But no one was there, just the empty room, and the feeling that he wasn't alone. James kept his flashlight steady, sweeping the room in controlled arcs. His training screamed at him, never turn your back on an unsecured space. But the equipment was right there. Evidence, proof that someone had infiltrated their security. He moved toward the laptop, keeping his peripherals alert. The screen showed more than just a route. There were photographs, dozens of them, close-ups of security personnel, time-stamped entries and exits, shift changes, blind spots in camera coverage. This wasn't amateur work. This was professional. Surveillance. James snapped photos with his phone, hands moving fast. He needed to document everything before the laptop screen went black. He froze. Someone had just remotely killed the connection, which meant someone was watching him right now. James grabbed his radio. "Control, this is Hartley. I found surveillance equipment in the north building, 4th floor. They're monitoring our position. I need backup immediately, and we need to change the princess's route. Now." The response came quick, sharp. "Backup is 2 minutes out. Do not touch anything else. Exit the building," but James couldn't leave. Not yet. He looked at the camera, the tripod, the scattered cables. Whoever set this up would be back. Or worse, they were still here. He heard it again, a soft scrape. Metal on concrete, this time from the hallway. James killed his flashlight and pressed himself against the wall, hand on his baton. His heart hammered, but his breathing stayed controlled. He'd trained for this, drilled for it. But training never quite prepared you for the real weight of danger. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Someone was coming down the hall. James counted the steps, judged the distance. 3 meters. 2 meters. The figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, dark clothes, face obscured by a hood. For a split second, neither moved. Then the figure ran. James bolted after him, flashlight back on, boots pounding against the concrete floor. The figure was fast, taking the stairs 3 at a time. James pushed harder, his lungs burning. Stop. Security. The figure didn't stop. They hit the ground floor at full speed. The figure shoved through the side door and into the street. James was right behind, bursting into the cold night air. But the street was empty. No sign of anyone. No sound of running footsteps. Just fog and silence. Impossible. James spun in a circle, chest heaving. The figure had been right there. 5 seconds ahead, maybe less. There was no way to vanish that fast, unless they'd had help. A car engine roared to life 2 streets over. James ran toward the sound, but by the time he reached the corner, all he saw were taillights disappearing into the distance. No plates visible. It's too dark. Too fast. He slammed his palm against a lamppost, frustration boiling over. His radio crackled. "What's your status?" James caught his breath. "Suspect fled on foot, picked up by vehicle headed east on Marlborough." "I lost visual." Copy returned to post. "Team is sweeping the building now." James jogged back, his mind racing. Whoever these people were, they had resources. Coordination. They'd been watching the hospital for days, maybe weeks, mapping every detail, planning something. But what? When he reached the north building, 3 officers were already inside, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Commander Ashford stood by the entrance, arms crossed, his face grim. "Show me," Ashford said. James led him upstairs. The room was exactly as he'd left it. Laptop, camera, cables, the map still frozen on the screen, though the connection was dead. Ashford studied it in silence. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's Ashford. We have a breach. Full surveillance setup targeting the princess's transport route." "Yes. Active as of tonight." "No, they're gone. But they have everything." He listened for a moment, his jaw tightening. Understood. "Initiating protocol midnight." He hung up and turned to James. "You did good work tonight, Hartley. You may have just saved her life." James nodded, but the weight of it was sinking in. "Who are they, sir?" Ashford looked at the equipment, then back at James. "We don't know yet, but this level of operation, this isn't paparazzi. This isn't tabloid journalists. Then what is it?" Ashford's expression darkened. Something worse. Within 30 minutes, the The room was swarming with plainclothes officers and technical specialists. They dismantled the equipment carefully, bagging every piece as evidence. James watched from the doorway as they worked, his mind still replaying the chase. The hooded figure, the way they'd disappeared. One of the tech specialists, a woman named Dr. Patel, approached Ashford with a tablet. "Commander, you need to see this." Ashford leaned in. James stepped closer, trying to catch a glimpse. "The laptop's hard drive was wiped remotely," Patel explained. "But we pulled fragments from the cache. Encrypted communications. Routed through multiple servers overseas. Can you trace them?" Ashford asked. Patel hesitated. "Not easily. Whoever these people are, they're using intelligence-grade encryption. The kind governments use." The words hung in the air like a threat. James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Back at the hospital, the mood had shifted. What had been routine security was now a lockdown. Officers stood at every corridor. Plainclothes agents blended into the staff. No one was getting in or out without being checked, rechecked, cleared. James had been pulled into a briefing room on the second floor. Commander Ashford stood at the head of the table. 6 other officers surrounded it, all senior personnel, all looking tense. "Gentlemen," Ashford began, his voice steady but serious. "What Officer Hartley discovered tonight confirms our worst suspicions. We are not dealing with media intrusion. This is a coordinated intelligence operation." He clicked a remote. A projection lit up the wall behind him. Photos of the equipment, the map, the surveillance angles. They've been watching us for at least a week. They know our routines, our rotations, our routes, which means they either have someone inside or they've been conducting external surveillance we failed to detect. One of the officers, a stern woman named Captain Booth, spoke up. "Do we have any idea what their objective is?" Ashford's pause was answer enough. "We're working on multiple theories. But until we know more, we have to assume the worst. They want access to the princess, either for photographs, intelligence, or..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. James felt the weight of it settle over the room. This wasn't just about privacy anymore. This was about safety, about threat assessment, about the possibility that someone with serious resources wanted to harm a member of the royal family. "What's Protocol Midnight?" James asked. All eyes turned to him. Ashford studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Protocol Midnight is a full counter-surveillance operation. We assume every route is compromised. Every exit is watched. So we don't use any of them? Then how do we move her?" Captain Booth asked. Ashford clicked the remote again. A new map appeared. This one showed the hospital and the surrounding blocks, but the route marked on it was different. It didn't use any of the main roads. Instead, it cut through a series of service tunnels beneath the hospital. Emerging 3 blocks away in an underground car park that connected to a private medical transport station, "We move her tonight," Ashford said. "Before they realize we've found their operation." "That's risky," another officer said. "She's still recovering." "Moving her ahead of schedule could. Leaving her here is riskier," Ashford cut in. "If they're this organized, they'll adapt. They'll find another way. We move now, while we have the advantage." The room fell silent. Then Ashford turned to James. "Hartley, you'll be part of the escort team." "Shh." James blinked. "Sir, you spotted the threat? You acted. That makes you part of this." Ashford's gaze was firm. "And frankly, we need people we can trust right now." James nodded, the gravity of the assignment sinking in. This wasn't just another shift. This was history, and possibly danger. 2 hours later, James stood in full tactical gear in the underground service corridor. The air was cool and damp, the ceiling lined with old pipes and fluorescent lights that flickered occasionally. The passage stretched ahead like a concrete vein beneath the city. The princess would be brought. Down in 15 minutes, around him 8 other officers stood at strategic positions. Captain Booth coordinated on comes with the team upstairs. Medics waited with a specialized gurney designed to keep Kate stable during the transport. Everything was planned to the second. James checked his watch. 4:32 a.m., The world above was still asleep. And if everything went right, no one would ever know this moment happened. His earpiece crackled. Primary package is moving. 8 to 3 minutes. James's pulse quickened. He scanned the tunnel again. Every shadow. Every corner. His hand rested on his sidearm, though he hoped he'd never need to use it. Footsteps echoed from the corridor behind him. 2 Royal Protection officers appeared first, faces stern and alert. Then came the medical team, wheeling the gurney carefully. And on it, covered in blankets, was Kate. She looked pale, tired, but calm. One of the protection officers, a man named Daniels, gave James a nod as they passed. James nodded back, falling into position on the left flank of the moving group. They moved quickly, but carefully. The tunnel amplified every sound. The squeak of the gurney wheels, the shuffle of boots, the hum of distant machinery. James kept his eyes forward, scanning for anything out of place. They reached the first junction. Captain Booth checked her tablet, confirming the route. Clear, keep moving. They turned left, entering a narrower section of the tunnel. The lights here were dimmer, older. Some of them didn't work at all, leaving pockets of shadow between the working bulbs. James didn't like it. His instincts prickled. Something felt off. He keyed his mic. Captain, recommend increasing pace through this section. Low visibility, copy. Team double time. They picked up speed. The gurney rattled slightly over the uneven floor. Kate's eyes were closed, but James could see her hand gripping the side rail. She was awake. Aware. They were halfway through the dark section when James heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A metallic click. He stopped, held up a fist. Halt. The entire team froze. What is it? Booth whispered. James strained to listen. There it was again. Faint, rhythmic footsteps. Behind them, he turned. Flashlight raised, illuminating the tunnel they'd just passed through. Empty, but the sound continued. Closer now. We've got company, James said quietly. Captain Booth's face hardened. How many? Unknown. She made a decision in an instant. Move. Now. Get the package to the exit. The team surged forward, the gurney bouncing over the rough ground. James and 2 other officers stayed back, forming a rear guard. The footsteps were faster now, louder, and then James saw them, 3 figures. Moving through the shadows. No uniforms. No identification. Stop. Identify yourselves, James shouted. They didn't stop. They ran. James didn't hesitate. Go. Get her out. The main team pushed forward, boots pounding against concrete. James and the 2 other officers, Morrison and Keene, formed a line, blocking the tunnel. The 3 figures slowed as they approached. Now James could see them more clearly. Dark tactical clothing. Faces covered. Professional stance. This wasn't random. This was planned. This is Royal Protection, James called out, his voice echoing. You are in a restricted area. Stop and identify yourselves immediately. The figures stopped. 20 meters away, too far to clearly see details, but close enough to feel the tension crackling in the air. One of them raised a hand. Not in surrender. In signal, James's stomach dropped. They're coordinating. Watch the flanks. The lights went out. All of them. The entire tunnel plunged into complete darkness. Flashlights. Morrison shouted. Beams of light cut through the black, but they only illuminated small circles. The rest was shadow. James swept his light left and right, trying to track the figures. They were gone. Where are they? Keene hissed. Ah! Back to back, James ordered. They formed a triangle, lights facing outward. The tunnel was silent now, except for their breathing. No footsteps. No movement. James's earpiece crackled. Captain Booth's voice came through, tense but controlled. Rear guard, what's your status? Contact lost. Lights are down. We're holding position. Negative. Fall back to the package. We're almost at the exit. James didn't like it. Every instinct told him those figures were still here. watching, waiting, but orders were orders. Moving, he said. Stay alert. They backed down the tunnel, lights scanning constantly. Step by step, slow and controlled, and then James saw it. A shadow moved. Just beyond the reach of his flashlight. Fast. Low to the ground. Contact left. The figure lunged from the darkness. James barely had time to react. He swung his baton, catching the attacker across the shoulder. The figure grunted but didn't go down. Instead, they twisted incredibly fast and kicked James's flashlight out of his hand. It clattered away, the beam spinning wildly. Morrison and Keene rushed forward, but two more figures emerged from the shadows. It was chaos. Bodies colliding in the dark, shouts echoing off the walls. James grappled with his attacker, trying to get control. The person was strong, trained. They moved like military. Like special forces, James managed to grab their arm and twist. The figure hissed in pain and drove an elbow into James's ribs. Air burst from his lungs. He stumbled back. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The figures retreated. Melting back into the darkness like ghosts, James gasped for breath, fumbling for his flashlight. He found it, clicked it on, and swept the tunnel. Empty. Morrison was on the ground, groaning but conscious. Keene was leaning against the wall, blood running from his nose. You okay? James asked, helping Morrison up. Yeah, you? Been better. James keyed his mic. Captain, we were engaged. 3 hostiles. They retreated. We're mobile. Copy. Double time it. Hartley. We're at the exit. They half ran, half limped down the tunnel. James's ribs screamed with every step, but he pushed through. Behind them, the darkness felt alive. Like it was watching, they burst through a doorway into a concrete stairwell. Light. Blessed light. And voices from above? James took the stairs 2 at a time. At the top, he found the rest of the team in an underground car park. The gurney was already being loaded into an unmarked ambulance. Kate was safe inside, medical personnel surrounding her. Captain Booth grabbed James's shoulder. You're bleeding. He looked down. His jacket was torn, a shallow cut across his forearm. He hadn't even felt it. I'm fine. Did anyone follow us up? Booth shook her head. Negative. We sealed the door. But we're not waiting around to find out. Ambulance doors slammed shut. Engines roared to life. Within seconds, the convoy was moving. Tires screeching as they climbed the exit ramp toward the street above. James watched them go, his heart still hammering. They'd made it. Kate was safe, but the questions burned in his mind. Who were those people? How did they know about the tunnel route? And why did they retreat instead of pressing the attack? Commander Ashford appeared from a side corridor, phone pressed to his ear. His face was carved from stone. He ended the call and looked at James. They let us go. James blinked. What? The lights. The attack. It was a probe. They wanted to see how we'd react. What route we'd take. How many personnel we had? Ashford's voice was. Quiet, dangerous. They were testing us. The weight of those? Words hit like a punch. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning, Ashford continued. We're initiating a full security review. Every person with access to royal protection protocols will be vetted. Every route, every safe house, every contingency plan. We're assuming total compromise until proven otherwise. Sir, who has that kind of capability? James asked. That kind of access? Ashford looked at him for a long moment. That's what we need to find out. Because whoever they are, they're not done. The next morning, the world woke up to silence. No news of Kate's condition. No updates on her recovery. No leaked photos or inside sources. The palace released a brief statement. The Princess of Wales continues to recover well and thanks the public for their patience and well wishes. Normal, routine, boring, exactly as planned, but behind closed doors, a different kind of operation was underway. James sat in a secure briefing room at Scotland Yard. Around the table were faces he'd only seen in classified. Briefings. MI5. Counterterrorism. Intelligence analysts. Commander Ashford stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. The equipment we recovered has given us a lead. The encryption signature matches known patterns used by a private intelligence firm called Archon Solutions. They're a ghost company. No public presence. No official contracts. But our sources indicate they provide surveillance and intelligence services to the highest bidder. One of the MI5 agents, a sharp-eyed man named Foster, leaned forward. We've been tracking Archon for 2 years. They operate in the gray zone. Not quite legal, not quite illegal. They've been linked to corporate espionage, political opposition research, and information brokering. Who hired them? Captain Booth asked. Foster's expression darkened. That's the question. And that's what we need to find out. Because if someone paid Archon to target a member of the royal family, this goes beyond privacy invasion. This is a national security threat. James felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. The professional surveillance, the military-grade tactics, the coordinated retreat. They weren't trying to harm her, he said quietly. Everyone looked at him. They were gathering intelligence. Building a profile, learning our responses. James met Ashford's eyes. Someone wanted to know everything about how we protect her, which means they're planning something bigger. The room went silent. Foster exchanged a glance with Ashford, then nodded slowly. Officer Hartley is correct. This wasn't an attack. It was a reconnaissance. Which means we're dealing with a long-game operation. Someone is building a comprehensive file on the princess's security detail, her routines, her vulnerabilities. For what purpose? Booth asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Either to sell that information, Foster said, or to use it themselves. Ashford pulled up a new image on the screen. A corporate logo, sleek, minimal. The word Archon in sharp modern lettering. We've identified 3 potential clients who've used Archon in the past 6 months. 2 are foreign governments with known interests in British political intelligence. The third is more concerning. The screen changed. A photograph appeared. A man in his 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, cold eyes, Marcus Wrentham. British billionaire, made his fortune in media and pharmaceuticals. He's been increasingly vocal about his opposition to the monarchy. Calls it an outdated institution, a waste of taxpayer money. James studied the photo. The man looked polished, powerful, the kind of person who could buy anything, including surveillance operations. Do we have proof he hired Archon? Captain Booth asked. Not yet, Foster admitted. But we have circumstantial evidence. Financial transfers through shell companies, meetings between Wrenthams, people, and known Archon operatives. And most damning, 3 weeks ago, Wrentham's media outlets started running stories questioning the cost of royal security, asking why taxpayers should fund protection for people who contribute nothing. He's building a narrative, James said. Get the public angry about security costs, then expose vulnerabilities to prove the system is broken. Ashford nodded grimly. And if he can demonstrate that even the Princess of Wales isn't safe despite all the resources spent protecting her, he scores a massive political victory. Need to bring him in for questioning, Booth said. Foster shook his head. Not yet. We don't have enough. Wrentham has lawyers who could tie us up for months. What we need is evidence. It's hard proof linking him to the Archon operation. Then we dig, Ashford said. Every financial record, every communication, every person in his orbit. We build an airtight case. It could take weeks, Foster warned. Then we have a problem, Ashford replied. Because Kate is scheduled to make her first public appearance since the surgery in 10 days, and if Wrentham's plan is to expose security vulnerabilities at a public event, he didn't need to finish. James felt ice in his veins. A public appearance meant crowds, cameras, chaos. Exactly the kind of environment where things could go catastrophically wrong. We cancel it, Booth said. Postpone until we've neutralized the threat. We can't, Ashford said quietly. The palace has already announced it. The press is expecting it. If we cancel now, it raises questions, creates speculation, makes us look weak. It's better weak than dead, Morrison muttered from the corner. Ashford's jaw tightened. It's not my decision. But I've been told the appearance will go forward, which means we have 10 days to identify the threat, contain it, and ensure nothing goes wrong. Foster stood. My team will focus on Rentham. We'll dig into every aspect of his operations. If there's a link to Archon, we'll find it. We'll double security for the event, Ashford added. Every person screened. Every angle covered. No room for error. He turned to James. Hartley, you're being reassigned, effective immediately. You're part of the advanced security team for the public appearance. James straightened. Sir, you've proven yourself. And right now, I need people I can trust in key positions. Captain Booth will brief you on the details. As the meeting broke up, James felt the weight of what was coming. 10 days, that's all they had. He just hoped it was enough. Over the next week, James barely slept. He and the team walked every inch of the Venua Children's Hospital in London, where Kate would be visiting young patients. They mapped sightlines, identified choke points, ran simulations of every possible scenario. Meanwhile, Foster's MI5 team worked around the clock tracking Rentham's network. On day 7, they got a break. James was reviewing security footage when Foster burst into the operations room, tablet in hand. We've got him. Everyone gathered around. Foster played a video. Security camera footage from a private members club in Mayfair. The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago. Marcus Rentham sat at a corner table. Across from him, a woman in her 30s. Sharp features, professional demeanor. That's Sophia Kane, Foster said. Former military intelligence. Now works as a contractor for Archon Solutions. The video had no audio, but body language told the story. Rentham leaning forward, intense. Kane nodding, taking notes. An envelope passed across the table. 2 days after this meeting, Foster continued, Archon operatives began surveillance on the hospital. The timeline matches perfectly. Is this enough to arrest him? Booth asked. Foster hesitated. It's enough to bring him in for questioning. But his lawyers will argue it's just a business meeting. We need more. Then we get more, Ashford said. He turned to Foster. Can your people get a wire on Kane? If we can catch her reporting back to Rentham, we've got conspiracy. Foster nodded slowly. It's risky. If she detects surveillance, she'll go dark. We're out of time, Ashford said. The event is in 3 days. We need to move now. That night, MI5 initiated close surveillance on Sophia Kane. James wasn't part of that operation. His focus remained on securing the hospital visit, but he followed the updates through secure channels. Kane was good. She detected the first surveillance team within hours and lost them in the London Underground. But Foster's people were better. They picked her up again using traffic cameras and mobile phone tracking. On the second day, she made a call. The intercept team caught every word. It's done, Kane said. The mapping is complete. Full coverage of entry points, security positions, and evacuation routes. I'm sending the package tonight. A pause as she listened. Then, understood, and the timeline? Another pause. 3 days confirmed. I'll have my people in position. The line went dead. Foster's team moved immediately. They traced the call to a burner phone registered to a shell company owned by Marcus Rentham. That was it. The evidence they needed. Within an hour, armed officers raided Rentham's offices in Canary Wharf. They seized computers, its files, and communications equipment. Rentham himself was brought in for questioning. James watched the news coverage from the Security Operations Center. The media was going wild. K-billionaire arrested in connection with a plot targeting the royal family. Speculation ran rampant, but James didn't feel relief. Something still bothered him. They're too calm, he said quietly. Booth looked up from her monitor. What? Rentham's lawyers? They're not panicking? They're not scrambling? James pointed to the news feed showing Rentham's legal team making statements outside Scotland Yard. They looked confident. Booth frowned. You think this is a diversion?
I
think Rentham's too smart to get caught this easily. James pulled up the timeline on his tablet. We find the surveillance equipment. We identify Archon. We trace it to Rentham. All in 10 days. Right before the public appearance. You think he wanted to be caught? James met her eyes. I think he wanted us looking at him instead of something else. Booth's face went pale. She grabbed her radio. Commander Ashford, We need to talk. Now. 20 minutes later, Ashford stood in the operations room, his face carved from granite as James laid out his theory. Rentham's entire operation was designed to be discovered, the surveillance equipment left behind, the meeting in a public place with security cameras, the phone call using a traceable burner. It's too convenient. Ashford's eyes narrowed. You're saying he sacrificed himself? I'm saying he gave us a target, something to focus on, something to make us feel like we'd won. James pulled up the security maps for the hospital visit. Meanwhile, the real threat is still out there, undetected. Foster had joined them, looking grim. If Hartley's right, we've been chasing shadows while the real operation continues. We have Kane in custody too, Booth pointed out. She hasn't talked, but we have her files. Her communications. There's nothing suggesting a secondary operation. Then it's someone else, James said. Someone we haven't identified. Someone Rentham, protected by drawing all the attention to himself. Ashford was silent for a long moment, weighing the possibilities. Then he made a decision. We proceed with the assumption that there's an active threat we haven't identified. Foster, I want your team to run background checks on every single person who has access to the hospital tomorrow. Staff, security, vendors, everyone. If there's a plant, we find them. That's over 200 people, Foster said. Then you'd better get started. The next day was chaos. While Foster's team ran checks, James and Booth conducted a final sweep of the hospital. They walked every corridor, checked every room, tested every lock. The children's wing where Kate would be visiting had been locked down for 12 hours. No one in or out except pre-approved personnel. James stood in the hallway, watching hospital staff prepare balloons, banners, excited children in their rooms, waiting to meet a princess. It should have felt joyful. Instead, James's instincts screamed danger. His earpiece crackled. Foster's voice tense. Hartley, we've got something. James stepped into an empty room. Talk to me. It's one of the hospital maintenance workers. Hired 3 weeks ago. Background check came back clean at the time, but when we dug deeper, we found inconsistencies. The references are fake. The employment history doesn't match. James felt his pulse spike. Who is he? We don't know yet. He called in sick this morning. Hasn't been seen since. What's his access level? A pause. Full building access, including the secure wings. James was already moving. Get me his file photo. Everything now. 2 minutes later, James's phone buzzed. He opened the file. A face stared back at him, mid-30s, unremarkable features. The kind of person who blended in. But James recognized something in the eyes. The same cold calculation he'd seen in the figures in the tunnel. This is our guy, James said. He's Archon. Has to be. We've got units searching his last known address, Foster replied. But if he's gone dark, he's not gone, James interrupted. He's here. Somewhere in this building? Ashford's voice cut through the channel. Hartley, the princess arrives in 15 minutes. We don't have time for a building-wide search. And we don't search, James said, an idea forming. We let him come to us. Explain. James pulled up the hospital blueprints on his tablet. He has full access. He knows the building. If he's planning something, he'll need to be close to the route. We've locked down the children's wing, but there are maintenance corridors that run parallel. Heating ducts. Electrical rooms. You want to use the princess's bait? Booth's voice was incredulous. No, I want to use the route as bait. We proceed exactly as planned. Full security detail. But I take a team through the maintenance corridors. If he's there, we find him before Kate arrives. Silence on the line. Then Ashford spoke. Do it. But Hartley, if there's any sign of active threat, we abort. Understood? Understood. James assembled a 4-person team. All experienced, all trusted. They entered the maintenance level through a locked access door. Weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the dimness. The corridor smelled of disinfectant and old metal. Pipes lined the ceiling, some hissing with steam. Their footsteps echoed on concrete. James signaled for silence. They moved slowly, checking every junction, every door. Above them, James could hear muffled voices. The main floor. Where Kate would be walking in minutes, his radio crackled softly. Primary package has arrived. Proceeding to the entrance, James's grip tightened on his weapon. If the threat was here, it would reveal itself now. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. James paused, listening, and then he heard it. A soft mechanical sound. Like something being assembled, he signaled to his team. 2 went left. 2 went right. James moved forward, slow and careful. The sound came from behind a door marked Electrical Access. Authorized personnel only. James tried the handle. Locked. He stepped back and kicked. The door burst open. Inside, crouched over a laptop, was the maintenance worker from the photo, and on the floor beside him, a high-powered camera with a clear view through a ventilation grate. A view that looked directly into the children's wing. The man spun around, startled. His hand moved towards something in his jacket. "Don't move!" James shouted, weapon raised. The man froze. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. On the ground. Now, the man complied, face blank, professional. James's team swarmed in, securing him quickly. James keyed his radio. Threat neutralized. Maintenance level, Sector 3. We've got him. Ashford's relief was audible. Copy that. Excellent work. James looked at the camera setup. Not a weapon. Not an explosive device. Just surveillance equipment. Just like before, what were you going to do? James asked the man. The man said nothing. Just stared. But James understood. This was never about violence. It was about exposure. Capturing private moments. Selling them to the highest bidder. Proving that even with all the security, the royal family wasn't safe from prying eyes. Rentham had given them the public conspiracy. This man was the private operator, the one who would have succeeded if they hadn't been looking. Within an hour, the threat was fully contained. The man was taken into custody. His equipment seized. And Kate completed her hospital visit without incident, bringing smiles to dozens of children who had no idea how close they'd come to danger. That evening, James stood in the Security Operations Center, exhausted but satisfied. Captain Booth approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You did good, Hartley. Really good. James accepted the coffee gratefully. Just doing the job. It was more than that. You saw what others missed. You trusted your instincts. Commander Ashford entered, looking equally tired but pleased. The man you caught is talking. Turns out he's not Archon. He's freelance. Hired by a tabloid to get exclusive photos of Kate's first public appearance after surgery. Rentham's operation was separate political espionage. And your maintenance man was pure opportunism. James blinked. So there were 3 separate operations targeting her at the same time? Apparently so. Ashford shook his head. The surveillance equipment in the abandoned building was Rentham's people. The tunnel attack was Archon probing our responses. And the maintenance worker was a tabloid's attempt at exclusive access. That's insane, Booth said. That's the reality of protecting high-profile individuals, Ashford replied. Multiple threats, multiple vectors, all converging at once. Which is why we need officers like Hartley, who can see the whole picture. He extended his hand. James shook it. You're being promoted. Effective immediately. You're part of the Royal Protection Detail. Full-time, James felt the weight of it. The responsibility. The danger. The honor. Thank you, sir. That night, as James finally headed home, he passed a newsstand. The headlines screamed about Rentham's arrest, about security breaches, about conspiracy theories. But buried on page 3 was a small article. Princess of Wales delights children at hospital visit. No drama, no danger. Just a princess doing her job, exactly as it should be. James smiled and kept walking. The real stories, he thought, were the ones that never made the news. The threats stopped. The dangers averted. The quiet victories that kept people safe, and he was okay with that. Because at the end of the day, that's what mattered. Not the headlines. Not the recognition, just the knowledge that when darkness came, someone was standing in the way. And tonight, that someone had been him.